Well, welcome to our masterclass today, which is all about developing a learning mindset for our learners. And our facilitator for today is Adam Lagood. So I'm sure we have all experienced having learners turn up to our learning experience, our programs, and have got no idea why they're there. The manager just said, you need to go along to this training program. So it's really hard for them to be motivated or be prepared to learn. So I'm really looking forward to Adam's session this afternoon. We've had the great opportunity to get to know Adam a little bit more during the last 12 months with our member lounge, which are now the L&D member or L&D lounges. And through that, getting to know him, he's also now become one of our regional advocates. So we're very honoured to have him as part of the ILP team. So I'm going to hand over to Bill Gerard, who's our CEO, who's going to be our host this afternoon. And thank you for joining us. Thanks, Bill.
Thanks, Carrie, and welcome everyone. I'm really looking forward to this session. I'll let Adam, introduce himself a little bit, but developing a learning mindset in our learners, I think Carrie's just said it. We all have been faced with that, and we probably all have war stories about things that have happened. For me, one of the worst ones ever was on an Army base when I was teaching a week-long program on continuous improvement. And I arrived about half an hour early to meet the commander of the base. And we went over to the training room about 10 minutes before the thing was due to start. At the time it was due to start, no one was there. So he stormed off, and about 20 minutes later, in marched 25 guys in uniforms. And I asked them, after the big rousing welcome by the commander, I asked everybody, how long have they known about this program? And they said, 10 minutes. He basically just marched them in off the field. So developing a learning mindset, you can actually face some really interesting challenges. So Adam, I'm not going to spend much more time on this, except to say that one of the things we're doing with the master classes now is trying to direct them to helping our members do a couple of different things. One of them is build your offering, develop offerings that are really really well developed and putting together. So we're seeing a number of different processes like that. The other focus we have is on how to build your business. So the last master class, we were talking about writing and skills on writing things, which is about building the business. And it's similar for the next one that we're going to be having. This one is really around about how we develop our learning transfer, our learning design, and things like that. So Adam, I'm going to turn it over to you. I know you've got some things that you want to do for us, and we've got almost 90 minutes. So over to you, my friend.
All right, thanks very much. In fact, Bill, I think we could probably spend 90 minutes just comparing war stories. So that's all right. You've reminded me of one, so I'm going to try and weave that in somewhere in my time. Just a little bit about me, my background. I've been managing my own consultancy for the last 25 years and have actually been in L&D for 30 since before it was called L&D. Really probably got into it because I love the performance side of things, the people side of things. I was telling Kerry and Bill that I did my first face-to-face in 12 months yesterday. So I'm still a little bit high because of the experience. So that's it. Now, I love being interrupted. So please, unless you've got the barking dogs in the background or whatever, feel free to take yourself off mute permanently or at any time and butt in. That's okay. It's all very interactive. We'll see how we go. So let's start. Now, I'm traditional, I've got the old PowerPoint, so I'll share the screen and see how we go with that. So you can all see the PowerPoints there, just a little thumbs up, that'll be fine. That's my my cue, if you like. Before we start, I just wanted to address a couple of assumptions, all right? Because I know who I've got in the room and where you've come from. So I just wanted to say, I know that you know most of this stuff. Okay, you're experienced in the field, you've been doing this for years or decades like me. If you didn't know something about changing the mindset of the people in your room, you probably would have starved to death a long time ago and be working at IGA. Some of you know this because you've studied it, studied the dark arts of psychology. Others of you, it's just something intuitive, and that's okay. You're doing this already. I also want to make this assumption, and I think this is a fair assumption. You've probably all come in here today with a learning mindset. Don't think any of you were forced to come. So because you've come here with a learning mindset, then you should know that even though you know this stuff, there's still plenty more to learn. All right. And carrying on from what Bill and Kerry have both said, even the best of us still get that one participant every now and then. In fact, I think 3 times a year, I get a participant that I lose the will to live. That's it. They're just so obnoxious. And I think my one war story, and I'll tell it now. My one major war story would be working at a major university here, and we're doing recruitment and selection, and it's a 2-day training course. And this fellow walked in 20 minutes late, through the doors open, 20 minutes late, blustered through the doors, and I'm doing my spiel in front of the room, but he just interrupted that and said, at the ANU, they only take 2 hours for this crap. What makes you think we need 2 days? And I didn't handle it well. I handled it well for me as a sarcastic person, but I didn't handle it well in terms of changing his mindset. I looked at him and I said, well, have you seen the staff at the ANU? That's why we need 2 days. Wasn't the best outcome. He made my life hell for the next day and 3 quarters. He did apologize to me at afternoon tea on day 2, but by then the damage was done. And one of the evaluations for that program said, Adam had a really good sense of humor. He needed it. And so I've had that tattooed on me somewhere. I think that's pretty good. All right, so let's have a look at, back to sharing the screen. I'll keep going backwards and forwards, in and out of the PowerPoints every now and then, just to mix it up a bit. But the outline for today, we're basically going to have a look at why do people turn up to our learning events without a learning mindset? And Kerry's alluded to some of the reasons there.
Adam, we can see both your images, both your slides and your next slide.
Oh, okay. Hang on. How's that? Is that better?
No.
Okie doke. So let me stop sharing and I'll start again. I'll try that again. All right. There we go. How's that?
That's good.
That's better. All right. So the second part of the session today is about strategies to to encourage the learning mindset in others, and before, during, and after, if you like. And we will also finish off the day with talking about the importance of connection, and making that connection with our participants and how important it is. So I'm assuming that most of you have come today because you know what a learning mindset is, but just in case, because we shouldn't make assumptions, just a brief overview, if you like. And the work I'm basing this on is from Carol Dweck, who many of you will have read. And she said that someone with a fixed mindset believes that intelligence, skill, and ability are hardwired, that people are naturally gifted, they're born geniuses, and so on, and that this is the level of my ability, my intelligence goes here, and I can't go any further. So I've got this fixed, I don't want to say mindset, I've got this fixed opinion of how good or how well or how far I can go. Whereas someone with a growth mindset, mostly, the 20 odd people in this room, they believe that intelligence, skills, and ability are something that are developed. They're like a muscle that you can improve on. And you improve this muscle through strategy, learning, passion, and effort. And one of the things that Carol Dweck said was that we all have an element of both. There are certain things in my life where I know I can improve, and I'm always looking to improve and so on. But there's other things that I just don't. I know I'll never be a great singer. It's not because I can't learn how to sing. It's because I don't care. I don't have that passion, that drive to do it. The amount of effort it would take for me to not sound like Bob Dylan is just not worth the effort. So you need to have that passion and drive for the growth mindset. So the growth mindset equates to the learning mindset that we're talking about today. All right, so enough about me. I'm already bored with myself. So why do people turn up to your learning gigs with the wrong mindset in place? Kerry's alluded to one, but you can say it out loud again, that's all right. Because they're sent, says Rachel. Okay, yeah, that's fair enough.
They have to be there.
Yeah, yeah. So they're sent by the boss, but they have to be there. Is also, it's a compliance training. You know, you have to go through this equity and merit session or something like that. I like that, Kim. Particularly, Kim said it's punishment. I run time management training courses, and the number of people who are sent to time management training courses because they didn't get something to their boss on time is phenomenal. So yeah, there's the punishment. Personal issues. Malcolm, what were you thinking there? Like they've got halitosis or something?
No, I was thinking, if they've just got something going on in their lives at the moment, they're stressed, their minds are elsewhere.
Oh, okay. So they've come to they've enrolled in the program 6 months ago, but something's just happened this morning or last night, and yeah, there's personal issues. Yep, good. So it's compliance and risk type training, says Taz. Trevor said, keeps changing them. See if they know more than you. Oh, Trevor, I've had one of those too. Particularly in project management training, people who turn up just to show how much they know. They don't understand the benefits yet of the program. Okay, so that's something we can solve. They've turned up to the program, they don't know what the benefits are. We'll look at that as we go through. Kim, it's part of the process of being managed out. Oh, ouch. That's really much a forced thing, isn't it? That's not good. Prior poor learning experiences. Okay, so that's something that I can relate to. The people come into the training room and it reminds them of school. Or they went to a training course 6 months ago and they were publicly humiliated by the facilitator. Always a good outcome, that one. So yeah, poor learning experience in the past. Professional development points. Okay, so they've got to get their PD points up, so they've just got to come. So they just sit there. I did a course once at the CAE, and it was a team leadership course, and a whole lot of fireys from the MFB, Metropolitan Fire Brigade, turned up. And the reason they turned up was because if they did a team leadership course, they got 10% extra pay. These people were never going to lead a team in their lives. It was a novel training course, I'll say the least. So Rachel, I'm with Kim because they're not producing and the organization wants to prove that they've done. Oh, okay, so it's almost like we're sending them to the training course so that we can say, we tried to help you. We didn't help you. Here's your hat, there's the door. Performance management purposes, so they're sent, yep. Bree has said they've come to the training because they just don't want to do their other work. All right, well, I think we call it corporate babysitting, don't we? Corporate babysitting. Okay. The catering. This is what I say to up and coming trainers. You can change your evaluation points 1 whole point just by having good food. If you've got lousy catering, you drop an evaluation point. So yeah.
I'll just add on that food one, Adam, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
When we were running programs up in China, we were always delighted that this one particular place that we would go to just north of Shanghai, that while any other place we would go, there'd be one of these 2-day programs. This place always had 2 2-day programs in the week we'd be there. And then we found out it was hairy crab season in the area, and the best hairy crabs in China come from this particular area. And that's primarily the reason why those classes were always full, etc.
That's amazing. I mean, again, you always get a better turnout if you're running your program at a fancy hotel, aren't you? So yeah, the catering, the person who nominated them saw it as a reward. I'm assuming, Jeff, what you mean there is they saw it as a reward for the participant, or not a reward for them as the manager to get rid of them.
Yeah, that's correct. And quite often it may not be a reward for the person who's attending.
Yeah. Oh, I see. So the manager perceived it as a reward, but I'm perceiving it as, I don't need this day off work.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah. Okay, I spoke to a member recently who put learners into 3 categories: prisoners, vacationers, and learners. Well, Kerry, actually, that's one of my opening spiels. If I notice that I've got some of these in the room, I actually say there's 3 types of trainees, and I call them sightseers, training junkies, and prisoners. And I've got a whole spiel that goes with that, so that's good. So, all right, look, you've got that down pat. I think there's plenty of good gist there. In fact, I'm even going to what am I going to do? I'm going to skip my PowerPoint slide because you've done a very good job of saying exactly what that was. Actually, the one thing that you probably didn't cover in that is they've walked into the room and reacted to you. You look like their ex. They don't like men with beards. They've looked at you and they've just thought, how can this person teach me anything? So yeah, I must say, and this is happening in my later years, I walk into training rooms sometimes and I think, you're a bit young to be teaching me anything. Yeah, you know, as I take my false teeth out and put them in a jar. But look, there's lots of reasons that people turn up to training with the wrong attitude. The thing is that we often end up focusing on that person or those people at the expense of the other 19 or 20 who were there with a great attitude. But rightly so. If we don't do something about that person with a crappy attitude, it's going to affect the other 18 or 19. So I think we do need to do something there. Okay, so Kim, one of my worst experiences was with a group of misogynistic aviation trainers. That sounds like a support group. Aviation trainers. I can imagine that'd be a very blokey sort of field. So yeah. Okay, so they reacted to you straight away because you were Kim and not Bob. Yeah. Okay. Leonie, I have definitely had that one memorable moment when one woman decided that she would persecute me and look for everything wrong with what I did. Oh my goodness. Wow. I feel like I've done well so far now listening to all you guys. So that's all right. That's good. All right. So you've covered that off nicely. That's all very good and well. I think we need to do some breakout room work. Oh, hang on. We got some more. Oh, it's never ending. Rachel, the topic itself can put people off. I once had 20 male mining engineers in their fluoro gear sent to my training on emotional intelligence. Actually, I've got a key for you, Rachel, because I used to teach emotional intelligence to engineers, but I called it managing yourself and others and didn't tell them it was about emotional intelligence till they got into the room. But yeah, they're minors, so that's good. Leonie, you're absolutely right. They did need to be there. All right, good. All right, I'm going to close off that particular segment now. I didn't realize that was going to yield so much good juice there, so that's good. My plan now is to break us into 3 breakout groups to do some work about how are we going to manage these people. And I've got some instructions, and I've put the instructions on a PowerPoint simply so, well, because I can. So here we go. We're going to break into 3 breakout groups, and I want, when you go into your breakout group, the first thing I want you to do is to appoint a scribe and spokesperson. So each group's going to, when we come back, I want you to say out loud what the group's decided. If you're in group 1, and I probably should have worded somebody up on this, I can sort out the breakout groups myself, if you like. If you're in group 1, your job is to try and work out what we can do as presenters before the session to help make sure that the person arrives with a learning mindset. So what can we do prior to the learning actually beginning for ourselves and for the learners as well? The second one is, if you're in group 2 rather, what strategies can we implement during a session to help change that person from a fixed to a learning mindset? And group 3, I hope, group 3 is always my favorite. What are some of the behaviors that we as facilitators do that stuffs it up? Like saying somebody who's from the ANU that their university is useless. those sorts of things. So I'm going to put you into breakout rooms now. All right. Okay. So who is the spokesperson for group 1?
That would be me.
Taz.
Taz.
Well done, Taz. So tell us, Taz, what can we do as facilitators to encourage a learning mindset in our participants before they even get there?
Yeah, we had some great input from the group, and what it comes down to is connecting with your learners prior to the learning event, giving them a sense that they know you and that the content that you'll be presenting or that you'll be running in your session is relevant to them and will benefit them. And some of the ideas that the group came up with is, number one, understand your audience. So you can provide context in your training and provide relevant examples that are relevant to the audience that you're facilitating to. A second example was connecting with your learners prior to the session. So this might be that you reach out to them via email or social media or LinkedIn to explain the purpose of the session and what they'll get out of the session. A link to that is you could send articles of interest or pre-work to pique their curiosity. The other thing you could do is reach out to them and ask them, what problems do they have in that particular area that's linked to the learning, so that we can understand and address them in the learning. And this could be done through questionnaires or one-on-ones. And that allows us also to use the learner's language in the actual session as well. They're the examples we came up with.
That's fantastic, very comprehensive. I like that idea of learning the audience's language. Years ago, I was working with they were called cooperative research centres, and they're a collaboration between universities and scientific organisations like the CSIRO. And so I was dealing with some very specific science areas and so on, and way outside of my field of knowledge. But I did exactly that, and I found out what projects they were working on, and learned a little bit of jargon, and I slipped the jargon into my course as often as I could, knowing full well that they knew that I had no idea what I was talking about. So that's good. But they loved the fact that I made the effort to learn their language. Okay, so I think that's important. All right, so let me have a look. Here's one I prepared earlier. I'm hoping that you can see that this time, just a blank screen at the moment. So I thought before, and this covers a lot of what you've just said, but just because there's one or two things that I wanted to add in. And so I was also thinking about sending information out beforehand and very much introducing yourself and the topic. And part of that is establishing your credibility to be there so that you don't have to necessarily spend too much time on it when they get into the room. But what you added in, which I thought was quite good, group 1, was then about the purpose and the reason, and the notion of maybe sending articles, not necessarily as pre-reading, because I find that a bit problematic sometimes, but certainly as, here's something of interest to you. The other thing I thought that we can do is make sure that we know our content. All right, so we are comfortable. The reason here is if we know our content and we know what it is that we're going to cover, we can actually focus on them when they get in the room rather than focusing on what's slide 3 again, and all that sort of stuff. So if we know what we're doing, and part of that, I suppose, or a lead on from that is being mentally ready. Bit of rehearsal. Now, if you run the same course 3 times a week, you probably don't need to rehearse. But I did a rehearsal of this session today because it's something that I've built just for the ILP. So I did a bit of rehearsal, and I am so glad I did. I found 4 typos in my PowerPoints, which would have ruined my credibility completely, I'm sure. And I also added in an extra slide. Really glad that I did that. Oops, sorry. And confidence. You should be confident by now. If not, acting classes may be necessary, but confidence is very good. And the other one is to be well rested, to make sure you're fit and ready to go. it does take a lot out of us. I don't know if you probably noticed that it's pretty tiring. So we've got to be ready, fit to go and so on. So that's good. Now, let's go back to you guys. Who was the spokesperson for group 2?
That would be me, Adam.
Okay, I'm hearing a disenchant. Oh,
The
there
Oni.
you go, Yoni. There you go. Yep. So,
Okay.
Okay, you can introduce it then.
Oh, so we were just doing the what do you need to do during the session? So we kicked off with, I think as adult learners, it's really creating the need to know. And we suggested that that would be through asking questions. So it might be asking what challenges they already have or they have at work, asking them what they want, asking them about what they already know, and ask them what might be stopping them from learning right now. So let's call out the objections. We had also naming what their objections might be. So I know that's a technique some people use with their frame up of, you know, you might be thinking XYZ right now, have empathy from where they're sitting and from their perspective. So let them know, and perhaps that links into what you just said in the first one about using their language, and so that they don't think you're just this, you know, facilitator rolled in from elsewhere and why should I listen to you, but actually demonstrate a little bit that you do have a bit of knowledge about it. The other one was we talked about managing the ego. So potentially some people sitting there going, oh, I already know all of this, which can be challenging. So we talked about different ways that you might address that. So one of them being asking for their expertise, but balancing that with not wanting to necessarily show them up and put them on the spot, because obviously they're there for a reason, may not know everything. So potentially using a game like a Kahoot where everyone can anonymously put in their scores and have a quick quiz and kind of right up front show that, okay, yeah, we do know some stuff, but there's probably some stuff we don't know and that we could learn. And yeah, so and making that anonymous so that it's a safe thing and you get them on board instead of offside in the first 5 minutes.
Good.
I think that was kind of it.
Yeah, again, comprehensive. You've done my work for me. I appreciate that. Just bouncing off a couple of those. I haven't done it, and I like that idea of the what's stopping you. So you know, putting it out on the table a little bit, and then reframing their objections. I think that would work particularly well if you had a group that was predominantly belligerent, not wanting to be there, or they were all sent or something like that. I do remember years ago, I was doing a customer service course in a regional library, and no one told me, but they booked me in for 3 different courses. No one told me, and I couldn't break through the audience for hours and hours and hours. And at lunchtime, somebody came up to me and said, you realize that we're running this big course because of a mystery shopper we had a couple of months ago. The mystery shopper had gone into the library and had such a bad experience that they decided to make it compulsory to attend customer service training. So nobody wanted to be there. And I'd love to have done some reframing then. That would have been really good to confront those issues. But of course, nobody tells the consultant. All right, so that's good. Managing the ego, I think, is very important. Letting people save face and stretch their knowledge muscles, I think is good. Let me see, I might just add some to that. Let's have a look here. Here we go. I think that's right this time, is it? It says during. Yeah. See, now I've lost all confidence in my sharing of screens now because I got it wrong the first time. All right, so I put this in. Make sure that you're ready and prepared as they arrive. So you all arrive early. You all arrive early to your training. Even with Zoom training, I arrive early. If I've got a 9 o'clock start with a group, I'm on my Zoom at 9:50. That's no good, 8:45, and I've got everything set up. I've got my PowerPoint set up, ready to go, my share screen's ready to go. I've got my notes in front of me and so on. And I know that I'm there before the first participant. The only exception to that seems to be when I am training engineers who seem to always rock up to everything 30 minutes early. I don't know why that is, but I always try to get in the room before them, but I'm not always successful. Making a connection with people. So as people enter the room, and you probably would have noticed as you came on board with even the Zoom today, that I tried to say hello to everybody. So in the physical training room, I'll say hello and start a conversation, find a connection there, find something in common. It's always good. And you talked about this in the pre, and you also talked about it in group 2, the reason why, the purpose for the training. Why do you need to learn this? And the reason, you guys are here today is because we all need to hone these skills that we've got. You know your content off by heart, or pretty much off by heart now. It's about learning the art form behind it. Help them belong to a group. So small group work, matching people up in the room, not in a elite singles type sense, but matching people up in the room in terms of, do you know that this person works in a similar role to you, and so on. Establishing your credibility. This is the one I struggle with the most, because I sort of was brought up not to toot your own horn, to blow your own trumpet. So for years, when I first started out in training, I just start the training course. I wouldn't let anybody know why I was eligible to be training them in something. And it wasn't until it was a negotiation skills course. And at 11 o'clock, one of the participants said to me, "So what negotiations do you do?" And I realized at that point that he'd spent 2 hours in the training room wondering, who's this guy to try and tell me how to negotiate? So I've learned that it's in my way of thinking, a necessary evil to establish your credibility. That's why I told you at the beginning that I've been doing this since 1832. All right. Another thing I think that helps people or melt down their fixed mindset and to launch into their learning mindset is to feel safe in the room. It is an environment where people can make themselves vulnerable or can feel vulnerable and so on. And I think people do need to feel safe. I had a group yesterday up in Canberra, and the library staff at the National Library, and probably within the first 20 minutes, one of the participants there looked at me and said, "There's not going to be any role plays, are there?" So I said, "No, only nudie twister games." No. I made her feel safe. We did have a case study, but I assured her that there was not going to be any public displays, and I wanted her to feel safe and comfortable, and there would be, she wouldn't be humiliated in public or anything like that. Always encouraging. I think as facilitators, people learn better in that sort of positive, encouraging environment. So when people do make comment or people do participate, I think it's important that we encourage that and are encouraging of their goals and objectives. People say stupid things in training courses sometimes. I think we still need to reward that participation. We need to reward people for taking a risk, for volunteering. You talked before about using their examples in the training room. What I tend to do is I call it out during the training course. So yesterday when we were doing negotiation, I asked them what negotiations they've got on the go, and they put them forward, and that becomes the subject of the next hour or so, and they put themselves on the line sometimes. So always reward participation and risk taking. Start with simple stuff. Again, years ago, I was a participant at a project management course. Now I run project management courses, but I went along to this fellow's course because he was said to be quite good. By morning tea, he'd alienated about 80% of the participants because he spent the whole time at a level. It was an introductory program. It was supposed to be basic project management, but he was so keen on flexing his knowledge muscles that some of the participants didn't even come back after lunch. It was a 2-day course. So start with simple activities so people get a win. They feel like they've succeeded at something. Praise people for the effort rather than being smart. Now, this is a difficult one. I read this in sort of my readings on growth mindset. When you say to somebody, "That's a very smart answer, that's a very clever answer," that evokes a fixed mindset because that's that natural genius type thing. And it apparently inhibits people from participating because they don't want to say something else in case they no longer look smart anymore. So you encourage the effort that they made. Oh, you know, that took a lot of effort to do that presentation or whatever. So a bit of the language there can be important. Present simply. Well, this is attributed to Albert Einstein. It was probably said by Mozart, but who knows? Albert Einstein was said to have coined the phrase or quoted, if you don't know a thing well enough to explain it simply, then you don't know a thing well enough at all. So our job as facilitators is to make the complex simple. Right? We're not academics because their job is to make the simple complex. Our job is to make the complex simple. So present simply. And ensure there's plenty of opportunities for people to reflect on what they're doing. And this becomes problematic when you have a client. I have a lot of clients who say that 2-day training course, what can you do in 2 hours? And what you do in 2 hours is take out all the fun stuff, all the reflection stuff, all the encouragement stuff, and you're just left with a really dry, and nobody learns anything, I don't believe. And as part of that, I think we need to allow time, make sure there's plenty of time for people to do things. All right, fantastic. Now, group 3, you had the fun one. Yours was what do we do as facilitators that inhibits a learning mindset? So who's our spokesperson for group 3?
Adam, it's Jeff.
Okay, Jeff.
So, yeah, I try to just quickly categorize all the things that we spoke about, and came up with a simple categorization of 3. The first was to do with assumptions. The second was to do with the role of the facilitator presenting information. And the third was in relation to specific topics. So I'll just quickly walk you through that, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So on the assumptions, yeah, I think one of the key points was, you know, making assumptions about people's ability. And one of the points that was mentioned there was technical ability. That, of course, if we make assumptions, then we may, in fact, be positioned, like you said, at a too high level or too low a level. And that fact was one of the other points. That we can be assuming not only too high, but also too low in terms of the participant's ability, of their knowledge and their background. So I thought that was a really important point. There was also the issue of perceived relevance, assuming that the participants actually perceive relevance in the content. And if we do that, of course, we're making a really big mistake. So that was the one point. The other one was to do with the way in which the facilitator presents information. So that could be the talking too much, or the talk ratio was mentioned, not reading the room during the process of delivering information. Let me just quickly, having all the answers. So getting really excited about our own knowledge and using, again, providing all the answers but not allowing other people to get involved. And the other one that came through, which was using a lot of jargon. So the example was used from financials, because that can really put people off and make them feel like they don't know what's going on. Yeah, so, and also not waiting for people to respond. So, you know, sort of, I guess, stepping into filling the silence instead of waiting for people to respond. So that was the second major category that I pulled out. And the last one was really specific techniques. So a couple of things that came out there were illustrating where you made a mistake. So as to help people, well, I should say not illustrating. Maybe that's because we're looking at the barriers. So you're not illustrating where you made a mistake, because that would help people to maybe feel less fearful or look stupid. And the other point that came back, which I thought was really interesting, was not giving participants an opportunity to teach the topic. And the point there was made about it can be really helpful to reverse the roles. So getting the participants to actually take on the role of presenting the so-called presenting the information, I suppose. So I think I've managed to capture them all. Yeah. So that's what came through from our discussion. I thought it was a pretty rich discussion that we had.
It was. It's sometimes easier to identify the negatives and then just reverse them to find the positive. So it was a very comprehensive list. A few things I got out of that. I wish I could read my own notes now, but never mind. That assumption of the level of too high or too low, I think as good facilitators, one, if we go back to what group one said, is find out about your group beforehand. Find out their level of knowledge, if you remember that. Barring that, you've got a few minutes at the beginning of your course. You can find out what their level of knowledge is, and change your presentation accordingly. The last set of Zoom programs I had, again, it was an introduction to project manager, but I had civil engineers in the room. I mean, they didn't need the really basic stuff that I was presenting. So I had to, on the spot, sort of adjust it up a little bit. And I think as good facilitators, we need to, and I think you mentioned, Jeff, your group mentioned reading the room. I think that's our real job. I think our real job is reading the room and knowing that you're pitching too high or too low. I think that's good. Talk ratio. I think I need to do some more work on talk ratio. But yeah, look, it's not about us; it's about them. And I liked your idea of having them do some of the training. Well, technically speaking, that's what I just did with my breakout groups, wasn't it? I got you guys to do my work for me. Yes, I had the PowerPoints just to prove that I knew something, but basically you guys were the ones presenting the material back. Why did I do that? Because I knew you knew it. I knew you knew this stuff. It was just a matter of putting it out on paper and getting it there together. You also mentioned in there, sometimes we don't give the participants a time to respond. Two thoughts I had on that. One was, as a high-end extrovert, I'm often guilty of that because I find the silences quite daunting. So I've got to pull myself back and, ask the question and wait. Secondly, when it comes to Zoom, on Zoom, there's a 7-second delay. So if I ask a question on Zoom, I've got to wait even longer because it takes time for people to formulate a response, take themselves off mute, say something. And so it's an even longer. So we have to learn to wait, if you like, a little bit there. Look, there's probably lots more things, many more things that we do that inhibit it. We're still going to do that in the next, if I'm training for the next 30 years, I'll still be gathering anecdotes about things that I did wrong in terms of participants and so on. But our job is to minimize that, if you like, and make sure that it doesn't happen too often. Good. All right. Now we're all back together again. So any comments or questions there? I'm a little ahead of schedule, so that's good. Any comments?
You're doing great, Adam.
Thanks, Taz. It wasn't quite where I was going, but yeah, that's fine. I'll take it. I'll take it. Yep. No worries. All right. So the next section, the last section that I said I would talk about was on connection, and I sort of was reminded of this when I put a post on LinkedIn about this particular program, and David Jager, who's not here today, he actually put a quote on there, and I wrote it down so that I'd know where it was. The quote is from a guy called Peter Block, who wrote a book called Flawless Consulting, and I didn't realize, but I've actually got that book up there. So in the book Flawless Consulting, he said connection before content. So he talked about connection before content, and I think it's a great quote. But I'll get to that in a minute. I think it's a great quote, but I'm not 100% convinced. So I've come up with my own Adam theory. This is still raw. It's still cooking, but I want to have a look at it in another context. Okay, so sorry, Rachel has said relationship before task. Yeah, same sort of thing. Rachel's also said the facilitator not having a sense of humor can put people off learning, as long as it's an appropriate sense of humor. and again, I'm going to just jump back a little bit before I show my next PowerPoint. But I remember going to a small business training course, and it was in the evening, so nobody really wanted to be there. We're all tired, and he was from a bank, so nobody wanted to listen to him anyway. But he got up and he said, "Oh, I don't do much presentation, but I was told that you should start with a joke." And he proceeded to tell a joke that offended at least 200% of the people in the room. It was really inappropriate. And there you go, Robin saying it should be in context. It had nothing to do with his presentation. It was just a, I can't even say it because it's so cultural. It's so inappropriate these days, but it was very inappropriate even back then, which was 25 years ago. So no, be yourself. I think the key to humor is just, there you go. I also think it has to be natural. So Leonie's right there. It has to be who you are. It's no good trying to quote Peter Hallier or something. It arrives. So Rachel said it arises in the moment, not jokes. Work really, not jokes. Okay, it works really well in my experience. Yeah. Funny people don't tell jokes. Funny people tell stories. All right, so humor is important, but it's got to be a natural humor. And I do think that does make people feel safe, and it makes people feel at ease, as long as it's appropriate for the group. Now, going back to, I've forgotten the quote now, connection before content. I had to think about it, and I thought to myself, yes, connection's really important, but so's content. I need to have some good content. So I came up with this, and I added in my old nemesis. So I've got connection, content, and credibility. Probably didn't even need a PowerPoint slide, but you know, I thought we needed a break from just me. So I think these three things are in constant tension. Firstly, I have to be a credible facilitator and content expert. I do need to make connection with my group. But if my content, and as we said before, is pitched too low or pitched too high, it's not going to work. If I've got perfect content, but I don't make any connection with the group, I'm in trouble. That project management course I was talking about before, where the guy pitched at a too high a level, one of the other things he did, which really annoyed me, was at 8:45 in the morning, there was about 5 participants in the room, and he was at the front of the room on his phone. He hadn't made eye contact with us yet. He hadn't said hello to us. He made no connection whatsoever. So even if his content was good, I already hated him. I had no rapport with him at all. So I like the notion here that we've got to get these three things right. If you get 2 of them right and not the other one, I really think you're going to struggle. So my assumption here today, if you like, is that we know our content. So that shouldn't be a problem. We do have credibility. Where the problem lies there is us making sure that we state our credibility or make people aware of our credibility. And so that's why today's focus is really on that, making connection with people. All right, a couple more things. Credibility comes from how you present the content and how you connect. Yeah, it does, Leonie, but I think sometimes we need to say it up front. You know, we need to let people know up front, particularly if they've come in the room with, and this is my metaphor for someone with a fixed mindset, by the way, the folded arms, and they usually look at you through their eyebrows too, like this. But, if somebody's come in with that, I think we might need to establish our credibility just to loosen the grip a little bit there.
Can I bump in, Adam?
Yeah.
Sorry, because you said we're allowed to interrupt. So
I prefer it.
So are you equating credibility with your credentials?
No, you don't necessarily have to say I've got a master's degree in projectology, or you don't need to say that, but you just need to say, you know, I've been working in project management for some time, or you know, I've been presenter for 25 years, or Malcolm's in finance. So I don't want to go to one of Malcolm's sessions without knowing that he's knowledgeable in finance. So those sorts of things. So it's not necessarily credentials. You can always have the degrees and diplomas on the wall of, oh, Malcolm has. Okay, you can do that if you like, but I really think it's about your credibility in the subject area. You know,
Yeah, so that's why I said the content, because I think it is, well, like you said, how you hated that guy straight up because he didn't look at you. So I think your credibility is immediately the second they walk in the room, like how do you greet them? How do you connect? And then the next bit is like how you present the content. And so of course you need to do a little bit of a, like, who the heck am I and why should I be standing here? But the credibility is probably, well, my sense is the credibility is probably threaded throughout the other two things. Yeah,
absolutely. It continues on. But if it was about credentials, I'd be in real trouble, because my introduction would be, hi, Leonie, my name's Adam. I've got a degree in philosophy and psychology. Yeah, not very good. So yeah, it is about those other things. And yes, of course, it's weaved in, because saying that you have worked in finance for 25 years is one thing, but you then prove that afterwards.
Probably coming back, Adam, if I can add to it, understanding that there are different needs in the room of different people. I think if we're dealing with auditory digital people, you know, the people who love research and facts and statistics, they probably want to know what credentials you have in the form of PhDs, graduate certificates, and so on. Whereas kinesthetic people will say, you know what, I really don't care how much you know until I know how much you care. So the emotional aspect of things, of really being able to connect with people. So we have different needs in that sense, and being able as facilitators to cover them all, I think that is the art of facilitation.
Well, that's interesting. When I was putting this together, Martin, I was thinking about that. I was thinking about, we do spend a lot of time as facilitators learning that neuro-linguistic programming stuff about people auditory or visual or kinesthetic, touchy-feely learners. And that's all very good. But what we don't spend, what I didn't spend any time on in my early years was, do they want to be there? You know, and I think we probably all, those of us who've been around for a while, we probably all incorporate visual, auditory, and doing type tasks into our training courses. And I think what Martin's saying there is maybe we can address some of these other mindset needs in those three ways. We can incorporate those three methods, if you like, in doing it. So maybe we've got to throw a PowerPoint up of my Bachelor of Arts from 1832. Maybe not. All right, so I just want going to the chat here for a minute. Robin said, I think we should call our credibility, then back it up with the delivery of the content. Perfect, exactly. Rachel, I established my credibility mainly through explaining who else I've worked with in the same area, location, profession. Example, I work a lot with local government, and then tell them what other local governments I've worked with. Yeah, I think that's very important. The work I was doing yesterday was with the National Library of Australia. So when I go to all the other local government libraries and I say, well, you know, they fly me up to Canberra to talk to the National Library, that gives me credibility in terms of my, not my subject matter knowledge, but my credibility in terms of the library space and the engineering space and so on. So when I have a client who's an engineering firm and I say that I've worked with Engineers Australia, I think that gives us credibility too. So there's credibility on a few different levels. So that's good. Excellent. Anything else before we move on? I'm loving this bit more. It's much better than my PowerPoints. Any other comments here?
Adam, just something that I've experienced, and I'm not sure if other people have found the same, but in the early years, I used to ask people what they expected from a program. And quite often, particularly if I was dealing with finance, people would raise expectations that couldn't be met in the program. Frequently that would happen. Oh, I've come along expecting to do net present value or something, discounted cash flows, which wasn't in the program at all.
Right.
I guess you could say that showed that maybe didn't read anything beforehand. And I found that often inhibits people, because I have to tell them that we're not going to cover that stuff. I can't leave it alone. And so I switched a bit, and I found that what worked better for me is to ask people at the beginning of a program, what is it that they want to accomplish with what we're covering when they get back to work? And then I found that sometimes the people who had these false expectations, I say false in terms of what the content was, actually ended up getting quite a lot of value out of the program. But so that question for me actually used to inhibit the expectations. I used to actually inhibit people initially. That was my experience anyway.
I like that slight change of language. I think that's really good. So what is it that you want to get out of the content that I've just shown you on my PowerPoint slide back in the workplace? I think that's really good. What I've done, I wasn't aware of that. I'll probably steal that one from you, Jeff. But what I've done in the past is if somebody's kicked something up that I wasn't going to cover in the program, I'd say, look, that's not actually covered by the content, but if we get some time at the end, we'll see what we can do. And I almost never did. But it was sort of like giving them that sort of hope, I suppose, or whatever, and tried to bring it up if I could, I suppose. But look, that can be a problem. So good, excellent. Emily said, I like to explain how I've learned what I've learned and how I've gotten to where I am. So that's your credibility. Show people I've walked in their shoes. That's good. Been uncomfortable if they're a size 6. Leonie, nice, good. Yeah, again, it probably all connects to how we let them know about their world, which gives us permission to be in front of them. Yeah, absolutely. My audience want me to be an expert, but not for me to think I am one. Oh, that's a t-shirt. I'm getting a t-shirt printed of that. My audience want me to be an expert, but they don't want me to behave like an expert. Yeah. So I have the expertise, but I want to let the group do the learning stuff, if you like. So facilitator. I know that. I'm feeling a book coming on. Yeah, there you go. I agree with you, Jeff. That's a really good one.
So, Trevor, does that mean they don't want you to be a jerk about it? Is it more about the attitude you bring?
Yeah, so one of the worst things that ever happens to me when I do my technical training is I get introduced as a world expert in my subject. You can only go down from there. Yeah. So, I normally like to say, yes, I did write the book, I've got this thing, but the level of expertise in the room here is incredible. You've got all sorts of experiences that I don't have. Let me share some of the experiences that I've had in a very specific area. And it kind of diffuses people that I don't think I'm a world expert, because all they want to do is prove that I'm not, with all the questions that I don't know. And I know there's so much that I don't know. So, but on the other hand, they wouldn't be there if I wasn't an expert.
Well, I think that goes back to what was said. The fact that you are a world expert in the field and you have written the book is getting people into the room. If you behave like that, it'll get people. You won't get people coming back after lunch. So, and that, to me, that's my measure of success. How many people come back after lunch? I have very low expectations. Look, I think that's really important. We have to establish our credibility without becoming, and I think Leonie said, a jerk about it. I can say that now because I'm quoting Leonie. So that's fine. All right, good. Excellent. Anything else? I've still got room. I'm about 10 minutes ahead of schedule.
I think one of the things you said was about knowing your audience. That's something else. I do a lot of training with technical people. And I've learned the hard way. I'll fly over to America for a conference, and like you say, the engineers are there half an hour early. And for years, I've really tried to establish connection before content. I failed horribly. The course hasn't started. I'm not going to tell you where I'm from. I don't want to talk to you until you start the course. And I've just learned that really for that audience, I'm better off getting a coffee, starting my content, building some credibility, and then in the break, they're more than happy to talk to me. But they don't want to talk to me until they've heard from me first. So that's maybe not the case. It's certainly not the case when I deal with salespeople. But with that particular group of engineering managers, it's just the way that they feel. It's like the course hasn't started. I don't want to know you.
Yeah. Look, what goes through my mind is, then what are you doing in the training room? Why don't you go and have a coffee yourself? But anyway, let me set up. But that's okay. I'd never let that show on my face. But that's interesting, Trevor. I haven't experienced that where people haven't wanted to engage with me. But yeah, it could be problematic. You do have to read your audience, and you do have to know if they're not comfortable talking, you just don't talk, I suppose. That's good. All right. Now, oh, I've got one more there. That's where it's good to know your audience. Yeah, Robin, I agree. So not only know your audience beforehand, but being able to read people, having the emotional intelligence to be able to read what people are comfortable with and not comfortable with. I think that's really important in our role. At the beginning, I build connection through talking everyday topics, footy, not about myself. So they still learn about me. Yes, my engineers are good with this. Yeah, absolutely. I think, I'm sorry, I didn't realize I've offended so many people who train engineers. So everyday topics are good. I would avoid politics. Some people think, oh, look, it's an easy bet. You just bag out on Donald Trump and you'll be okay. You can't guarantee that everybody in your room has the same political view that you do. Even QAnon go to training courses. And apologies if you're that one. I'm sorry. But yeah, look, topics like football or topics like world events that are happening in the world, I think are important. Also shows that you are in touch with what's going on in the culture and society at the time, which is why I'm a bit of a news junkie, to be honest with you. It's a bit of a flaw. All right, so I've got one more bit to show you, and this is deliberately left to last. But my conclusion here is this. But wait till the end. Don't get too disheartened by the first line. The first line is, we can't change another person's mindset. So we've just wasted an hour and a half pretending that we could. No, you can't change another person's mindset because those drugs are illegal in Australia. What you can do is create an atmosphere where change is possible. And as Group 3 said, pointed out, we can also create an atmosphere where change is not possible. Right. So it's up to, if you like, it's up to the individual whether or not they're going to leave their fixed mindset and go into their growth mindset, into their learning mindset. It's up to them whether they do it. And we have a part to play in that in terms of we create that atmosphere for them to do it. One of the things when I've been studying on mindset, one of the things I found problematic is that if a person enters your training room and they have a very solid fixed mindset, the problem is someone with a fixed mindset doesn't believe their mindset can be changed. So we have to create that atmosphere and then hope they come along with it. Right. That was my very last PowerPoint. Any questions or comments at this point in time before I hand it back over to Bill? Yeah. Bill doesn't want to talk. All right. Well, look, I'll just say thank you very much for attendance today. It's been really good, great participation, really excellent work together. So thank you again, and I'll hand it back over to Bill.
Thanks, Adam, and
thank you.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Adam, it's interesting. Every time I attend a masterclass and listen to what people are talking about, you get these memories like the one I mentioned about the army and things like that. And I just had another one when one of the groups was feeding back about what you can do before you meet with the audience. And for 10 years, I went out to Israel every year for about 2 weeks to basically run a course out of a master's course in entrepreneurship and innovation. And Leora, the professor that ran the school there, was telling me that this particular group that I was going to see this year was particularly ornery and very, very smart. No nonsense entrepreneurs, no nonsense at all, to the point where a Harvard professor she'd brought out to teach a class, they all walked out after 2 hours and said, this is bullshit. So that's the kind of people that, if you've ever worked with people from the Middle East, it's kind of like that. So I thought, what could I do about that? And as it turned out, Tony Buzan was in town, one of his tours here with us. And we were talking about memory techniques because we were running the Australian Memory Championships at the time. And he showed me some of the memory techniques. So on the plane ride over to Israel, what I did was I had a half page of each person that was going to be in my class, and there's about 50 of them. So I had a sheet of paper for each one, half a page on top of them. So what I did is I read that, mind mapped it out. So where were they from? Where did they work? And what was something personal about them? Mapped all that out and then memorized it. And so when I arrived at the school, there were 3 people standing at the bottom of the stairs, and I knew who they were. I called them by their name and asked them how their relatives were going in New York or where it happened to be. And as each person came into the room, when I went in, I called them by their name and mentioned something about them. Well, I had them hooked for the whole time I was there because they couldn't believe that you were doing that. That kind of preparation was something unique for me, but it was just a really interesting thing. The more you know about your audience, the better off you're going to be, I think. And that was an extensive one that I did, but I was using it to develop the memory technique that Tony had showed me as well. So that was part of that process. Does anybody else have any personal experiences that they want to share with us on any of the things that Adam's been talking about?
I just wanted to add to that, Bill. I just think one very strong way of making connection is remembering and using people's names.
Yeah, absolutely.
People love to hear their own name. And if you have had, if before the course starts, you've had a conversation with somebody and you can bring that up during the rest of your presentation. Oh, I spoke to Bill earlier and he was telling me about, not only does Bill love it, but everybody in the room loves it because they know now that you were listening.
Yeah, that's particularly good at conferences as well. When you talk to a few people, if you've got a big room, you mention, say, and point to the person that you remember their name and the relevance to what it is you're looking at. Does anybody else have any experiences in this area?
The only other thing I was thinking on, when Jeff and I used to do a fair bit of development of programs together, we'd always factor in a activity prior to the program, and it was whether just to get them to relate to what we're going to cover, like whether it was a story, their experience, those sorts of things. So we got them to share that. So rather than doing introductions, we used to get them to just share that during an activity. But it just got them thinking and gave them a bit of an insight into what we're going to be covering during that program. So, and it worked really well.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I think just as a corollary to what I was saying earlier, that's one of the ways I've overcome that sort of sitting, not wanting to talk to me at the start of a class. I stalk the class once with their names on LinkedIn, make a connection, have a chat, and then when I walk in the room, oh, hi, Bill, how are you going? And it's like your old friends.
Yeah.
So I think, as we all talked about earlier, that pre-course preparation, that they're not sort of still sizing you up when you start, can really help the start of the program.
Yeah, absolutely. Particularly if it's a lengthy program. Yeah. Well, Adam, if there's no other comments or questions from anyone, I'd like to say fantastic session, my friend, and thank you very, very much for that. I mean, well, I learn something every time we're here, and that's really what it's all about. For everyone else, thank you, Ken, for coming along and participating as you did. We have a few things coming up that I wanted to tell you about. First of all, in 2 weeks from now, we have our next master class with Renee Hasseltine. And I highly recommend you come along to that, because she's going to be talking about how to develop visual models to explain what it is you do. So she works with organizations that are having difficulty sometimes communicating what it is that they're producing, and helping them to produce visual models which allow that to happen. So she's a real expert in this area, where she's going to take us through that process. And I've sat through her half-day session with her, and I found it really, really interesting. So that's coming up in 2 weeks on the 5th. I think it's the 5th of May. Then the one after that, 2 weeks after that, is Kevin Baum and David Yago talking about this technology of facilitation and things like that, or participation, technology of participation. And these guys are both real masters in this area. I mean, people like Kevin have worked with the United Nations and places like that to actually understand how to facilitate. And I've seen Kevin facilitate at one of our master class or our meetups here in Melbourne about a year and a bit ago now. And it was just outstanding stuff. And again, that focus is going to be, Renee's focus is going to be about how you build your business, how you present yourself and things like that. Kevin and David's session is going to be very much about how you build your offering and how you develop that. And like I say, what these two guys don't know about professional facilitation is just not worth knowing. I mean, they have some significant process there. And then we're going to switch around a little bit because we're starting our monthly meetups as well, or our meetups in Brisbane and Melbourne are coming up. Brisbane is on the 4th of May, and we got one here in Melbourne on the 18th of May, and this is rebuilding our tribes after this COVID year. So we're hoping to get some great people, a lot of people along to those sessions to reconnect, I guess, in a physical world as part of that process. And then I think it's about the 9th of June, we have another masterclass scheduled with Shuba, who's going to be talking about how to blend video into your training. So not just replacing your training with video, but how you blend it in and use video to great effect in getting that basically the transfer of learning through as part of that process, and how to build that into the design. And again, I watched a session with her just today as well. And it's a staged process about why you want to do this and how you pull it together. So we have some really, I think, exciting things coming up, and it's really exciting to be able to get back face to face as well, to have some shared camaraderie. So if you're in town in Melbourne or Brisbane, please get along. I'm intending to get over to Adelaide and Sydney in the next couple of months as well to fire some things up there as well. And for those of you that are in Melbourne, Kerry will be in town for the Melbourne event, and I will be up in Brisbane for the Brisbane event. So that's all part of that process. So that's what we've got coming. If you saw our newsletter coming out on Tuesday, you'll know that we're going through some changes with the new look and how we're going to be doing things. We'll keep you informed of that as we move forward. But it's all really exciting, I think, what we're doing at this stage in time. Any last comments or questions? All right. Thank you very much. Look forward to seeing you all at a masterclass. Don't forget, Mondays at 4 o'clock East Coast time, we have our member lounge or our L&D lounge, as we call it now, where everybody is welcome. It's free to attend, and it's really just a process of camaraderie. We lay some things out on the whiteboard to talk about. We vote on those things, and then we share the process. And it's always a joy to be done. So thank you for that. And by all means, come along. It's on our events page if you want to register for it. And once you've registered the first time, it's the same link every week, so you don't have to re-register all the time. All right,
Great,
I will
thank
leave
you.
it there. Carrie's asked me to close off the session today, unless, Carrie, you want to say anything?
I knew you'd do that. Thanks, Bill. No, just thanks for doing that quick wrap up, Bill. Adam, thank you very much for sharing your knowledge and facilitating that session. And thanks to everybody else for joining in and having their input. So really get a lot out of these sessions, just learning from different stories and people's experiences. So thank you very much.
Fantastic. Thanks, everyone.
That was great.
Yeah, fantastic.
Thanks all.
See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Cheers.